I told somebody I was going to ask who's the spokesman for this gang, and they said they'd all walk up to the microphone. Dante?
He's next to you.
That's me.
That's you? Before I read this, would you like to explain a little bit about what your mom stands for? or should you not?
How did our name come to be? Or?
Yeah, walk up here.
All right.
Walk out.
That's nice.
You want to pick it up? You guys aren't kind to each other.
Yep, that's good. All right, so this is our team here. We've got a few more that couldn't make it tonight, but we have been together for about a year and a half, I would say, and it started just out of a friendship thing from the roller skating rinks. My family owns all of the roller rinks here in Des Moines, and so we obviously have a lot of kids that come through the doors, and some of these guys we've grown up with, and some of them have just made their way through the past years. So we kind of formed it together. There are some world champion speed skating members on this team as well as just everyday average Joe people that have just enjoy roller skating. So we've kind of come together and we practiced hard, and we had our ups and downs through our, I guess, what you call our growing pains of forming this team. But we did work hard and participate in the national championships in this past October. And so we're real proud of our accomplishments. We look forward to the next season. We're always taking new members. So any of you guys want to come join us, we certainly will take them. Doesn't matter your skill level by any means. I'm going to have my brother come up here and speak. This is Tony.
Well, just briefly, the name Your Mom is because roller derby is a very aggressive sport. Actually, I can't believe that my wife lets me play it, but it's super competitive. If you saw the females play it, it's just unbelievable how hard they play. So when we got together, you can tell that we're not the largest bunch of people, but if you came as you did and you came and watched us, you'd see that we're kind of quicker than the average bear. So Your Mom is kind of a reference to the fact of we're not playing the game that you're playing, we're playing our own game. And so we came up with something that was countercultural. So Your Mom is what we chose. It's not just in our team name. We've got names that are, most of the names that the player names are really aggressive, like I killed him and this not and whatever that guy said. But our names are, I'm Peter Pan, we've got Tinkerbell, Twinkle Toes, Little Bunny Foo Foo. So we've got names across the board that are all match Your Mom to answer your question. And we appreciate that you're recognizing us, so thank you.
Sure, it's our pleasure. For those of you that used to get up on Saturday mornings and watch roller derby, this is not the bank track roller derby. This is flat track. They're on a flat floor, which I'll guarantee is a lot harder. And a few months ago, I had the pleasure of seeing them out at the fairgrounds in the Jacobson building, and it was quite the treat. Also, the Des Moines Derby dames were there, and I'll tell you, they're not holding back. It's worth going to see. And I'd also like to state that Your Mom men's roller derby team is going to be versing That's What She Said Women's All-Stars. It's coming up this Saturday, 6:30 p.m. at Skate West, and I'm sure that they would like to see all of you out there, and it's either $10 or 4 non-perishable food items, which goes to the food bank, which we're going to be talking about something very similar in a few minutes about that.
Right. We hope that our problem is how we're going to get all the canned goods down. We'd rather take that than any money. So.
Cash. I'm going to read the proclamation. Whereas one goal of the city of Des Moines is to be an entertainment hub for all ages and to attract visitors from the metro and beyond. And the sport of roller derby is spread across the United States, attracting fans, sponsors, and skaters from all ages and cultures. And Your Mom Men's Roller Derby is comprised of talented young men from the Metro claiming Des Moines as their home, and Your Mom is one of only 45 leagues across the United States, one of 2 leagues in Iowa, and the City of Des Moines would like to recognize the superior skills and athleticism of Your Mom Men's Roller Derby, and Your Mom Men's Roller Derby represented the best in sportsmanship and skill, returning to Des Moines with the 2012 Men's Roller Derby Association Champion title. Now, therefore, I, T.M. Franklin County, on behalf of the City Council and the citizens of Des Moines, do hereby proclaim Saturday, December 8th, 2012, as Your Mom Men's Roller Derby Day. Thank you, National Champions. Well, they want to take some pictures.
Back to my photos.
Good job. Thank you. Next, for holiday food baskets, could we have Marcy Rothdahl and Dolph Floyd? Who's the spokesperson? Tell us about the holiday food basket program.
For the last 30 years, Des Moines Community Action Agency has worked with schools, businesses, churches, city employees, county employees, and just the general public to put together a program that provides 1,000 baskets yearly to low-income families with a 3 to 5 day supply of non-perishable food items, plus a gift certificate for each family to purchase perishable items, milk, produce, meat. It's been a wonderful program each year, and I want to thank each and every person in the community that has helped us with this project. And I would like to add that this year, you can still donate to our project. If you are interested, please give us a call at 283-4180. We'd be happy to accept non-perishable food items and also cash. If you don't want to call us, you can go to the city's website at www.dmgov.org. There's a turkey down under the photographs. Press that turkey, and there's a couple of steps to get you to a link where you can donate online. And we'd appreciate any donations. We brought with us today Dolph Pulliam, who has supported our project for the last 5 years with Grace University. We want to give him a big thank you for all the work that they've done and the large amounts of foods they've donated.
Well, this has been a project of love for us at the university, because this is one project where our faculty, our staff, our students get involved, and it's a simple job for me. I just sent out an email campus-wide and say that if you would like to donate a food basket to a needy family, just contact my office, and we get over 100 emails back immediately. Our folks at Drake love this project. They love helping the community and love helping those who need help in our community. So thank you for recognizing us for something that we enjoy doing.
You know, city staff have been involved in the holiday food basket for quite a few years. And I've noticed walking around that I don't see too many of the baskets around. And I do believe that if they'd call, I think Doug Romig is the easiest way to remember. Can you get them food baskets, the boxes? And I would encourage all of our staff to become involved in this. Some of the departments are having friendly competitions on this, and I know that our HR department and our city clerk are having a competition, and I'm actually helping with the city clerk, and the director of HR said last week that it's on like Donkey Kong, but I will say that we're kicking you. We got you. They've already had to pick ours up once, but it's a wonderful thing that's happening, and it's a good time of the year to be giving to people that really need some help. And I would encourage everybody, if you can't give some food, get some cash to them. We all know that there's people out there that need the help, and this would be a wonderful time of the year for it. And with that, I'm going to read the proclamation. Whereas the holiday season is an opportunity for Des Moines residents to share their good fortune with neighbors who are less fortunate, and as families gather for the holidays, meals are an important part of the family celebrations, and the City of Des Moines wishes to help as many families as possible to enjoy nutritious food during the holiday season, and the City of Des Moines will conduct the holiday food program and encourages all Des Moines residents to contribute to this effort and to provide eligible families with nutritious food for the holiday season. And the City of Des Moines wishes to express gratitude to all those contributing to the success of this program and making our city a caring and responsive community. Now, therefore, I, T.M. Franklin County, on behalf of the City Council and the citizens of Des Moines, do hereby proclaim December 3rd through the 17th, 2012 as Holiday Food Basket Weeks. Thank you. And we'll start the council meeting here shortly.
Frank, we're ready to get started. Frank, can you hear me?
Yep.
We can hear you better now.
Good.
Right here, he's coming.
The mayor's on the line, Skip.
Skip, he's calling up.
Thank you all for being patient. Pardon? I think we need to do the invocation first, and ordinarily one of the council members does the invocation tonight. Councilmember Christine Hensley has volunteered. If everybody that would like to join in would please stand.
I'd like to share a holiday poem from Henry Wadsworth Longfellow this evening. The holiest of all holidays are those kept by ourselves in silence and apart, the secret anniversaries of the heart. When the full river of feeling overflows, the happy days unclouded to their close. The sudden joys that out of darkness start as flames from ashes, swift desires that dart. Like swallows singing down each wind that blows, white as the gleam of a receding sail, white as a cloud that floats and fades in air, white as the whitest lily on a stream. These tender memories are a fairy tale of some enchanted land we know not where, but loveliest landscape in a dream. Thank you.
Okay. Can we have roll call, please?
County. Mr. Mayor, are you there? Coleman?
Here.
Moore?
Here.
Grease? Here. Mahaffey? Here. Hensley?
Here.
Meyer?
Here.
I'll try and get the mayor back on the line.
Okay. Next would be a motion approving the agenda as presented and/or
I'll
as
move.
amended. It's been moved. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next up is approving the consent agenda, which is items 3 through 35. These are routine items and will be enacted by one roll call vote without separate discussion unless someone, council, or the public requests an item be removed, be considered separately. Tonight, from the council, 4M, Coleman votes no. 5, Moore and County vote no. 20, Hensley and County vote no. And 27, Mahaffey wishes to speak.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
I neglected, I'd like to move item 46 up right after the consent agenda as well. And that's the
Okay.
Yonkers project.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that wishes to pull anything between 3 and 35 for discussion? Okay, not seeing any.
I'll move the balance.
It's been moved.
Aye.
Frank voted yes. Chris, your vote didn't show up. Christine,
Oh, thank you.
thank you.
7 yes.
Okay, I believe at this time what we're going to do is we're going to move into the hearings first. Which would be number 36, if that's fine with the rest of the council.
40, it's number.
Is it 40? I'm sorry. Okay, we're opening the hearings at about approximately 5:14. Number 40, on application of certificate of public convenience and necessity by Crown Cab Company, Margarsaw Yana, to operate a taxi cab service with 5 vehicles. Council Communication number 12-593. Is there anybody here to speak for the applicant?
Good evening, I'm James Sheets, attorney, speaking on behalf of the applicant, Margarsaw Yana, Crown Cap. Are there specific questions, or just a general review of the application and the merits thereof?
Anything you'd like to add?
Well, we have re-tendered this application. It was internally defective. My client didn't have the benefit of counsel, and there are various questions on there that are advantaged by the benefit of counsel, and particularly in terms of his personal experience. He has significant experience as a driver of the elderly and the infirmed for a state institution, and we offer this both as an equivalent of taxi driver experience. He also has, until recently, been driving with one of the local cab companies here in Des Moines. I understand that he was recently terminated, which coincided with his application here before you. The dates that, and so he has put forth his application. He has stated his business purpose and his business plan with it, which seeks to reach out to underserved communities within the Des Moines area. It has real merit. And I don't think there have been a couple of objections expressed. And I would ask that you read through those and review with caution. And this is an area I think Des Moines has, according to our local newspaper, made some improvements on, but it historically has been subject of comment. And I think what we're going to do here today can bring further development to the Des Moines area as a Midwest Metro Center.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that'd like to speak on this item?
Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Mayor on the phone, members of the council, my name is Chris Pose. I'm an attorney. Office address 317 6th Avenue, Des Moines, here on behalf of Trans Iowa. We stand in respectful resistance to the application submitted by Mr. Janney and his counsel. It's our belief, and we had filed a letter to indicate that the public necessity and convenience is not necessary in this particular instance, and that the existing 123 cabs, 100 of which are operated by our client, are sufficient to provide the taxi service that is needed here within the city of Des Moines. I'm going to allow my client to speak just briefly, and I believe he has a couple of drivers who can back up the fact that there is not a need at this time for additional cab service. I would like to submit and have you receive and file an article out of the Des Moines Register, which is dated June 14th, which is entitled "Drivers Losing Cash in Crowded Des Moines Cab Market." And just have you receive and file that article as part of your other materials that you're considering.
I'll move to receive and
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
file. Aye.
If there's no other questions of me, I'll defer to Lee Christensen, who's involved with Trans Iowa. He can speak to specific facts with regard to need and necessity here in the city at this time.
Acting Mayor and City Council members, Lee Christensen, 1550 East Army Post Road here in Des Moines. I'm the General Manager at Trans Iowa. We operate Capital and Yellow Cab companies. I'm here tonight to voice our opposition to the issuing of a certificate of public convenience and necessity to Crown Cab to operate taxi cab service in Des Moines. First of all, there is no need for additional taxi cab service in Des Moines. I have drivers that are not busy, that are not making a living, that have left because they can't make a living. The Court Avenue and the airport, they're more than adequately served because of small cab companies that have been issued certificates in the past. They have no business throughout the city. They only sit at the airport and Court Avenue, where they continue to take the longer, more profitable trips. If the city has too many taxi cabs chasing too few fares, the driver's income will drop, the equipment will not be maintained, and the full-service cab companies that the city now enjoy with 24-hour, 7-day-a-week service, providing service for short trips, will be in jeopardy. Thank you for your time.
Are there any questions of Chris? Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name's Sean Noe. Live at 1010 West Street in Des Moines. Been a taxi driver, owner, operator, 10 years. I've noticed in the last 5 years, the money I'm making has been falling off. due to too many cabs on the street. There just isn't enough business in Des Moines. And I object to the adding of more cabs. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Bill Shackelford. I reside at 2011 East 29th in Des Moines, Iowa. I've lived all but 5 years of my life here in Des Moines. After devoting about 31 years to my career in insurance, I began driving a cab 6.5 years ago. I leased from Trans Iowa. Just from a purely subjective standpoint, we do not need another taxi cab company in Des Moines. And as you know, in addition to transportation being provided by DART, we have Trans Iowa that operates Capital and Yellow, Freedom Cab, United Cab, and City Cab. And the question is, do we need a fifth cab company? If you get out of your office sometimes and drive around the city you manage, you'll notice the airport, which is usually constantly full of cabs back clear up to the back taxi cab stand. My earnings are down about 20% roughly from what they were 6.5 years ago. So in my subjective opinion, we do not need a fifth cab company in Des Moines.
Thank you, Bill.
I'm Rick Howe Cunningham, Low and Kelso, 2824 104th Street, Urbandale, Iowa. I'm counsel for United Cab Company. When the council denied the application on September 24th, one of the concerns was the lack of experience and training by the applicant. My client has had a long-term goal of owning and operating a taxi cab company. So I've asked the owner, Mohammed Habib, to just give you a short summary of how he qualified himself and what the requirements are.
My name is Mohammed Habib. I'm the owner of United Cab, and my address is 1002 28th Street. First of all, I want to say thank you for you guys letting me operate in Des Moines. And I just want to start from the beginning. When I was in back home and in Kenya, so I drove taxi for 3 years, and I was the assistant helping the cab, the dispatch, and then when I came here, and then I started working before I want to achieve my goal, and I started working for Freedom about a year before I can put the application. So there's a lot of things needs to be learned in the taxi business. You need to learn about the dispatch, you need to learn about the customer, you need to learn about core revenue, we need to learn about the airport, about all the short trips, long trip, there's a lot of things that needs to be learned. I think it's anybody who's applying the application, they should have experience before they put application. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
The application that was filed and denied on September 24th was followed by the application that's before you today, which was filed on November 5th. The City Council, I think, challenged the applicant to do some things to qualify himself, the kind of things that can't be done in 6 weeks' time. As a transportation attorney, I file and work on applications with state and federal regulatory bodies. And when a person is denied, whether it's an application to operate or a safety upgrade or whatever, the expectation is that there will be changes and there will be plans that will be executed, and that when they return, things will be significantly different. In this application, it was somewhat more complete, but the experience that he didn't have when he said, I have no experience in the transportation of passengers, hasn't changed very much. He recalled that he has acted as a valet at a hospital, and I suppose shuttled people between buildings, or had some responsibility there. He also, as an assistant nurse, had a number of responsibilities, some of which were probably making some calls to assist people with transportation. He tells us he's a cab driver. I'm assuming that this is a job that has started since September 24th. He certainly would have remembered it if he was here and had that job at the time of the hearing. 3, 4, 5 weeks, it isn't enough time to learn what you need to know. We don't know whether that was interim, whether it was backup, whether that was part-time, whether it was full-time, who the cab company was, what kind of service he performed. None of that is included in the application or has been presented to you. I would submit to you that this client is not qualified, and that your original motion was a good one, and you always have the opportunity to return, but not in 6 weeks. Thank you.
Any questions? Is there anybody else in the audience that'd like to speak on this item? Not seeing. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Council. I just want to respond to that and say that a couple points about whether Des Moines is saturated with cabbies and so forth, and they're not having enough service. On inquiry, diligent inquiry, speaking to former dispatchers of Capital Cab, they have told to me that on various occasions, cabbies do not respond to requests for service because it involves going a significant portion over the Des Moines area, or it's at late at night in areas that represent risk or some other desirable or undesirable condition. And I spoke to one dispatcher recently, and she said in the Drake area, as many as 25–30% of the calls at night, say at 4 o'clock in the morning, do not get responded to because the cabbies simply don't want that assignment. And my client is very confident that he wants those assignments. If you check his business plan, what we stated, it doesn't make use of cherry picking the best rides from the airport. It looks to going out to traditionally underserved. It looks to catering and reaching out to the infirm, the elderly, the disadvantaged, people who may not be attractive customers for other cab companies. And this is something I think Des Moines needs. He's reaching out to places like Ankeny, Carlisle, Clive, Waukee. He's not trying to reach into the crown jewels of downtown service. He's looking toward the outlying areas. And so I think that should be pointed out. The other thing is, I don't think the counsel for Trans-Iowa, he has spoken speculatively toward my client's abilities. He has worked exercising a higher than ordinary duty of care in the transportation of passengers for a state hospital involving the transportation of the infirm, the sick, physical and mental. He's done that for a year, full-time. Those skills are fully transferable. They can be used as a cabbie service, and I think those skills are appropriate, should be valued as such. The other thing is, I invite you to read an article, June 26th or 28th, 2012, Des Moines Register. A lot of the cab service in Des Moines is controlled by one company, 80%. If I look at federal standards for antitrust, that's a trust. And I don't think any sector of the economy can be served by that type of concentration of services into one actor. And I think you should review that. The private sector is the only real solution for cabbie service. Check Chicago, New York. And I ask that these type of standards be applied to the current application. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions of Mr. Sheets? Anybody else to address this subject? Not seeing any, we'll close the public hearing and go to council deliberation. Christine?
Where I'm at is I don't see any change at this particular point. I think that we do have a saturation of cab drivers within the city of Des Moines. I am bothered by the fact that the application was not filled out correctly when it was submitted. I guess I feel that that burden is directly on the shoulders of the individual. He should have made sure that he knew exactly what he was filling out. And I believe it's problematic that you're coming back within a very short period of time. In fact, I'd like to even direct the city council or our city council or attorney to I think we need to have some restrictions there. Otherwise, we could be revisiting this issue every 6 weeks, every 8 weeks, and I think that's problematic. I think it should be similar to what we provide, or the ordinance on plan and zoning. Once you're turned down, you have to wait a year, which I think is a reasonable period of time. But at this point, I am not comfortable moving forward, and I would make a motion to deny.
Anybody else?
No,
We'll have a vote.
Motions to deny.
correct.
Aye.
Frank voted yes.
7 yes.
Motion was to deny.
I'm sorry, what's the final vote?
7 yes.
7-0. Deny. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes,
question.
sure.
As we were going through the agenda, and I just noticed this, I noted on item 25 that their enterprise zone requests, that on the latest agenda that came out, there were several that had lines through them. So, and it's Christ the King, the Conlon properties. So could somebody address, are we saying that those were not?
When we go back to consent.
Okay, could somebody come back to us on that?
Can I just say, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Sure.
if I could just explain briefly. Those items are really associated with other items on the agenda, so they're elsewhere on the agenda. You'll come to them later.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to 41. It's on Vacation Valley right-of-way, Central Fire Station number 1 at 900 Mulberry Street. A is the first consideration of the ordinance above. B, final consideration of ordinance above.
Yes.
Waiver requested by legal department. It requires 6 votes. Is there anybody in the audience to address this? Not seeing any, we'll go to...
I'll move item 41, A and B.
Any council discussion? We'll have a vote. Frank?
I just will, I think I'm going to vote aye, but I have some concern. Have we, has the deal been closed, or where are we on that? Is the zoning subject to the closing of the property, or how are we viewing that?
Mr. Manager?
Mayor, excuse me, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, Matt Anderson, Assistant City Manager. The rezoning is actually the next item on the agenda, item 42. And if you recall, there was a split zoning on the property. There's 2 buildings, the two different halves of the property had different zoning. Yeah, we're cleaning it up. Okay. Yes.
But to the mayor's question, just to repeat it, will this live on if we don't close on it, or have we closed on the property?
We have not closed. If the development agreement that you approved 1 or 2 council meetings ago had a list of items that needed to be completed before the actual sale of the property was to close. This is one of those things that was a condition precedent of closing. So this does not. This is not the final trigger in closing on the sale. There were other things that they need to do. For instance, the project is going to the Urban Design Review Board tomorrow. So they're going through the process of hitting all those bullet points that we require them to jump through before we closed on it. So this is just one step in the process. And I guess to answer your question, whether or not we sold this property to the Des Moines Social Club or to another entity, we'd still want to get 41 and 42 done as the owner of the property to get the alley vacated and get some consistency with the zoning. So this is something
because if the sale falls through, we own it. And
we'd be asking you to do these things regardless if we would be buying it. So yeah, this is a good cleanup item.
Frank, did that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you.
You're still on aye?
Yep.
7 yes.
Motion carries. Number 42, items regarding the rezoning of 900 Mulberry Street, the existing central fire station. A, to amend the Des Moines 2020 community character land use plan, future land use designation from downtown, support commercial to downtown, retail office, core fringe. B, is hearing on rezoning of the property from C3A, Central Business District Support Commercial, to C3, Central Business District Commercial, to allow use of the Des Moines Social Club with theater, restaurant, and nightclub assembly venues. C, first consideration of the ordinance above. D, final consideration of the ordinance above. Waiver requested by the city manager, requires 6 votes. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak on this issue? Not seeing any, we'll close the public hearing and
I'll move 40, A, B, C, and D.
Frank?
Aye.
Seven yes.
Motion carries. We'll go on to 43. On request from Raymond Garneau to rezone 2324 Southwest 9th Street from C1 Neighborhood Retail Commercial to C2 General Retail and Highway-Oriented Commercial to allow conversion to a plumbing and heating shop. Planning and Zoning Commission recommends denial. Roll call contains alternative motions. Is Mr. Garneau here, or would staff like to speak on this?
Council members, my name is Raymond Garneau, 1315 John Street, Des Moines, Iowa. I currently own Ray's Plumbing and Heating. Been in the city of Des Moines since 1974. And this building that we purchased it with the idea, it used to be a gas station with a service bay area into it. They've got me listed down here as a plumbing and heating shop, but mostly it was going to be redo the building and make it an office and put a new door back into it for the service door, for the service area. We're not looking to make it a full schedule plumbing shop where we've got gravel and the backhoe and all that kind of stuff sitting outside of it. It was basically just going to be an office where we could utilize the office space and take calls and carry some small parts in there. And after talking to the neighborhood, we're in a neighborhood where there's probably 300 older homes that this day and age, getting a service company or something that can repair faucets or pumps or things, something like that for the neighborhood is an asset. The big box stores don't do that. There's a lot of little, it's a kind of a trend that we're losing over the years. And being able to drive my truck to the office and do some paperwork and take some calls, 90% or 95% of my work is away from the area, the shop, in my service truck. So there wouldn't be a whole lot of activity going on there. We'd hope to probably hire an employee if we could build this little service business. But under C1, I'm not able to do any kind of repair, they said. Well, the repair that I'm going to be doing is going to be awful small. Like I said, I'd probably be fixing a faucet, which there's not very many people that can do that. And the big box stores don't carry these parts. You can go get normal parts that they sell a lot of, but anything that's oddball or something that needs repaired you can't get. One example is like a hot water heater, for instance, which is pretty common, but most of your older homes, a lot of them have what they call a short or a low boy hot water heater that's not as tall as many. Well, a lot of they don't stock them because they don't sell a lot of them. Well, I would keep some of those, or one of them, in the shop area. If a person needs one, you can get one and order one, but how many people want to wait 3 or 4 days to get a new hot water heater in? Same thing with some faucet parts. Same thing with a sump pump or a garbage disposal. Well, a lot of these older homes and people don't have the money to go out and buy something new, where a small repair could be done for a minimal cost. That's basically what I wanted to do there. Now, I don't need full C2, but I was asking for C2 with some restrictions on the things that the staff doesn't want. We can meet that criteria. And I want that to kind of stay with the building and be able to put the overhead door back in. You know, we got a service truck that's probably got $20-something thousand worth of tools and another $5,000-6,000 worth of merchandise on it. We don't want to leave it sitting outside. We want to be able to back it in, and also some of the tools that we carry in the truck, we only use on special occasions. And well, with that service bay, there's a lot of area in there. I want to be able to take one of those tools out of my van and store it in that service bay and use it when I need to, so I'm not jumping over it in the truck. As far as storage, the only storage I would have would basically be some of these parts that I'm going to put on the shelf and try to build this business up where I can hire a full-time employee and put somebody to work there. So basically, that's what I was after, and all the people I talked to in the neighborhood were all for this. Now, this building's been closed for over 3 years, and we're in the process trying to put this back and make it an asset to the city in this neighborhood instead of having a vacant building sitting there. As far as the activity going, I don't think they're going to see a whole lot of people there. The staff was kind of worried about all the traffic, but when this place was a gas station in the service bay, there was all kinds of cars coming and going on that corner, and they never had a problem with it. Since we closed it, since it was closed, the staff's also, as we've got to meet some of the new criteria with some greenery and some trees, which I don't have a problem with, but the parking lot is pretty small, so if we go according to the zoning where we take 5 or 8 feet off that parking lot, it's going to be kind of hard to do that and still have an access or acceptable parking lot for any kind of business to run there if you do that. Now, I'm not against putting a planter in there, or some planters that can be closer to the sidewalk like they do downtown where they've got some of the big flower planters and stuff that are on the side. Trying to cut that concrete that's 8 inches thick and have a tree grow in that area is going to be kind of hard for them to even survive. So basically, that's along the lines, that's what I'm wanting to do. It's not going to be a full-fledged plumbing company. It's basically going to be kind of a service area with an office. I don't know if there's any else thing I want to add to that, but basically that's all I got to say about it, I guess. Any comments or?
Thank you, Raymond. Christine?
Mr. Garneau, I read through all of the information from the plan and zoning hearing, and they're very supportive of your business and are wanting to work with you. And I understand that you've got neighborhood support, and so we want to make this work for you, but it's my understanding in looking at the staff recommendation, and Mike, I'll look to you. If the plan and zoning recommended denial, but they also wanted to be able to convey that you should go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Even if they would have approved it, there would have still been some need to go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. So I believe that you'd have strong support going to the Zoning Board of Adjustment, and that's really where you need to take it. So if we take action tonight, it's not because we're not supportive of your project, but for you to be able to get the variances that you need to operate the business there the way you want to operate it, that's where you really need to go. So did I state that right, Mike? Okay. So that's what I'm prepared to do tonight with a strong message that we're supportive, and we would encourage the Zoning Board of Adjustment to work with you, and that would be your next step. And there's also comments in the discussion from P&Z members that wanted that conveyed as well.
Yes, that was their outlook at the end of the planning and zoning meeting.
So we'd love to have you come in, but just the type of business so that you can operate in a manner that you feel you need to in that area, that's going to be the best direction for you.
Okay.
Do you understand that? And are you?
Yeah, I think so.
It's just one more step, and I know that's never what you want to hear when you come before the city council. But
I think this is all kind of new to me, so I'm not.
Sure.
Ray, I think staff can help you when we're all done here. They can help you work through that process.
And Mike Ludwig is the person that would probably work with you to, and I don't know what the next Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting is, but you have a lot of support. I just want to make sure that you understand that even though I'm going to make a motion to deny, it just allows you then to go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment.
Okay. Well, see, another one of the recommendations too was also for me to be able to use that service bay. In the notes that I received is that they want it sprinkled with fire protection.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've been to every filling station on the south side, and there's not a filling station on the south side that's sprinkled.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to do that, that's probably a $7,000 or $8,000 deal to get that accomplished, which under the new zoning is required. But if you look at every service station on the south side or in most of Des Moines, they're doing that kind of work. I mean, they're catering to people, bringing cars in and doing that type of work. My use is only going to be personal.
Sure.
To bring my own personal vehicle in and park it, and you know, or an employee that I have bring a truck in. So none of that work's going to be time. And so
I'm guessing that because your building sat empty for 3 years or more, you're going to have some issues you're going to have to deal with. So I'm going to make the motion to deny. Mr. Legwood is right there, and he'll sit down and visit with you about next steps and making sure that we get you through the Zoning Board of Adjustment then.
Christine, in terms of process, is the denial necessary in order to go to the zoning board? Is that?
I'm sorry?
Do we need to deny it tonight in order to be able to?
Yes, I'm making a motion to deny.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Aye.
Thank you.
And
Thank you,
good luck
Brandon.
to you on your business, and Mr. Legwood will work with you to make sure you get it through the Zoning Board of Adjustment.
Michael, you didn't have anything to add, did you? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Garnett.
I did have one gentleman, one property owner that came here that was going to add, you know, that, but that's where the person behind the property. So don't know if we need to have him talking to that.
Anybody that'd like to speak to this subject, if you could come up here behind the podium.
I'm the owner of Peterson
We need your name and address.
Harold Peterson. My address is 8370 Beardsley, Norwalk.
Thank you.
And I bought the two properties adjacent, or right behind 905 and 909 Kirkwood, which sits behind the 2324 Kirkwood. And without beating around the bush, they were drug infested. There was a fire there when they were just on the border of being condemned. And so I'm glad that the city council has the foresight to see, to help this gentleman with the business, because it helps our neighborhood tremendously, having a business there and having cars come in and out, not just this, well, idle time to have people, you know what I'm trying to say. So, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Michael?
Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, Michael Ludwig, Planning Administrator. Just to clarify, the subject property is about 5,000 square feet in size. So the Planning and Zoning Commission's concern was that going from a neighborhood commercial zoning to a highway-oriented commercial zoning allowed maybe a little too intense of commercial use of the property. They were in support of denial of the zoning, with the applicant going to the Zoning Board of Adjustment for a use variance. That use variance can be tied to the property owner and doesn't run with the land, versus if the zoning is changed, that would run with the land. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Coleman?
7 yes.
It's been denied, and Mr. Ludwig will work with you on it to get to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Thank you.
Have we passed anything yet? Do we just deny stuff?
Okay, we'll go on to 44. On First Amendment to the second restated citywide urban revitalization plan to allow qualified improvements to commercial property in the River Point West area to receive tax abatement. A, communication from Plan and Zoning Commission. Is there anybody who'd like to speak to this?
I'll move 44A.
Any council discussion? Frank?
Aye.
Frank votes aye.
Which one is this? I can't
Mr. Coleman?
7 yes.
Motion carries. We'll go on to number 45. On proposed resolution of necessity for sanitary sewer improvements, 4503 to 4506 Wakanda Parkway. Roll call contains alternative motions. Council communication number 12-596. Mr. Brewer.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, Jeb Brewer, city engineer. If you look under the screen, I've got a map of the assessed area. This project was initiated by the citizens
There are 3 properties here that are currently on septic systems. They petitioned the city to install sanitary sewer so that they could eventually hook up their properties when their septic systems were no longer operational. There was a public informational meeting. As you see, the original petition had 2 property owners that were in favor of it. When we had the meeting, the 3rd property owner verbally indicated that they're in favor. They haven't signed the petition, but they did mention that they were in favor of it. Your vote tonight under state ordinance requires 6 votes in order to approve it, which would then authorize us to be able to start the design and construct the project. And a portion of the project would be assessed to the property owners. The other portion, like the street restoration, the city would pay for, as it's in our interest to extend the sewer. If there's any questions, I don't know if any citizens were here that wanted to speak on this, but this is the hearing for the resolution necessity.
Anybody in the audience to speak on this subject?
Only if you have questions, because it's my father's property, is 4506, I'm part of it.
We'll close the public hearing and go to council.
I'll move item 45.
Frank?
Aye.
Seven yes.
Motion carries. That ends the hearings at approximately 5:52, and we'll go back to number 27 under consent.
Item 46.
Yeah, we're going to do that immediately after consent, and we got one item on consent to do yet, and that's Mr. Mahaffey.
Okay, it won't take but a minute here on item 27, the CVS pharmacy up in Highland Park area. We ran into some problems with that as far as the sign size and height and so forth, but CVS has been very cooperative, and they're willing to go along with staff, and they've worked it out with Mike Ledwig, and so I just wanted to bring it to attention at how cooperative they've been, and I will move item 27.
Great.
Frank?
Aye.
Seven yes.
Motion carries. We'll move on to item 46. Items regarding historic renovation of former Yonkers building at 713 Walnut Street. Council communication number 12-600. A, approving, is that number correct? $3 million in community development block grant, disaster recovery CDBG DR funds, and $250,000 home investment partnerships funding home loan with 713 Walnut LLC for the development of 120 housing units as part of the Yonkers building project. B, approving urban renewal development agreement with the Alexander Company, Inc. and conceptual development plan. C, approving application for enterprise zone benefits to be referred to the Des Moines Enterprise Zone Commission and the Iowa Economic Development Authority for Yonkers Building, LLC, Joe Alexander President, Alexander Company, $35 million project constructing of 120 units at 713 Walnut Street in the Gateway Enterprise Zone. Matt.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, Matt Anderson, Assistant City Manager. When I started with the city in 2002 in the Office of Economic Development, the first week on the job, one of the first meetings Rick sent me to was to go meet with folks at the Downtown Community Alliance and Mayor Preston Daniels about what are we going to do with the vacant Yonkers building, because we knew they were pulling their corporate offices out, and that was foreshadowing. We knew the store was going to be going years later. One of the few people who've been working on that project as long as me has been David Voss at the Alexander Company. He came early in the process. We stalled. He left for a little while, and he came back, and it was David and his company's persistence that got us to where we are today. I'm going to let David Voss from the Alexander Company give you just a real quick summary of the project. They are a great company. They've been someone that we've been trying to get to do a project in the city of Des Moines for a long time. Not because we don't have great developers here already, but because they bring a national expertise on tackling some of the most difficult projects in the country, and they have a portfolio that is really amazing. The type of projects that you have to work on for 4, 5, 6, 7 years before you ever even get a spade of dirt turned. So a great project, a great company to have here, and after 10 years, I'm happy to report we're finally going to get it done. So I can answer any questions you have on the development agreement or any of the other aspects of the funding, but David will do a quick intro for you of the project.
Mayor Pro Tem and City Council, I appreciate your consideration of this project. It's been a long time, and I was afraid that Councilwoman Hensley's poem had to do with the hair color of the people involved in this project.
We have your name and address.
But
David, we have your name and address.
My name is David Boston. I'm with the Alexander Company out of Madison, Wisconsin. Again, thank you for your consideration. We're very excited to be at this point. This council resolution brings a very important piece to this financial puzzle of seeing this project redeveloped. Our next step is to go before the Iowa Finance Authority with our bond allocation and the tax credits necessary to bring this project under construction. Our hope is to be under construction by April of 2013. And it's only been with the dedication of people like Matt and Rick's staff and Rita. They've been very tireless, and there's been times when I was afraid that they were going to answer the phone and say, now what? It seems like there's been a lot of hurdles that have been thrown in front of us as we try to come up with a solution to see this project redeveloped. Importantly, the project takes quite a bit of commercial space, vacant commercial space out of the Des Moines market, which I think is a great benefit to the city of Des Moines. The vacancies in the commercial space certainly does not help for those that are trying to market existing commercial space elsewhere. It also provides a very important link between the courthouse district and the sculpture gardens to the west of our project. I've walked that section of Walnut Street at night quite a bit when I'm here, and I see that it's dark, and the businesses tend to close down and roll up their sidewalks at 5 o'clock. I know the city's made a great commitment to revitalizing Walnut Street, and this will be an important part of that, putting 120 new homes right on Walnut Street. That'll just add to extending those business hours and adding life to that street. So we're excited about that. And of course, there's the sense of place and the importance that this building has to the people of the city of Des Moines, and far-reaching beyond the city of Des Moines. It seems everywhere I go, people know the tea room. They've had weddings there. They've had different receptions, have fond memories of that space, and we're excited to be able to bring that space back to life and make it a part of the Des Moines culture again. So again, thank you for your consideration.
David, a couple of things if you could just expand upon. This is going to be a mixed-use building. The first 2 floors will be retail/commercial space, and then the rest of the floors will be housing. And originally we were talking about some market rate units, but now it's going to be 100% affordable. Is that correct?
That's correct. And initially, we wanted to do mixed income housing. We felt there was a strong demand for market rate housing downtown. Unfortunately, some of these hurdles that were thrown in front of us brought the mixed income financial model out of the picture for us. So this was the model that we were kind of shoehorned into. There is a strong demand, of course, for affordable housing as well, especially in this area downtown. We looked at the number of people that work in the immediate vicinity of the building, and there's a very strong demand. The market study was very favorable for that. The retail space is going to be retained on the first floor, much of it on the second floor as it fronts the skywalk. And we also want to see some interaction and work on the corner of 7th and Walnut Street to try to get people from the skywalk down into the efforts that the city's making on Walnut Street itself.
So if there's a change in some of the hurdles that if those are resolved favorably, would there be the possibility that you could go back and include some market rate units in the building?
The timing is really the issue. The state historic tax credits run out on this project in November of 2014, so we have to be completed with our construction by that time. So, there may be movement at the national level to change legislation regarding the taxability of state tax credits, the lease pass-through structures, and that type of thing. These are all complicated issues, and we don't see, especially with the fiscal cliff and everything else that they're dealing with right now, that this is going to be something that's going to be happening in the near term. So it really is, this is really the last chance at getting this done.
Okay. It's
Mr.
exciting.
Coleman?
Thanks.
On that specific point, can you describe the makeup of the affordable units? Percentage of?
Yeah, the affordable units are set aside for people earning 60% of the area median income. We have 2 units that are set aside at 50%.
60 and 50, okay.
Right.
But only 2 at 50%.
Right, so 118 at 60 and then 2 at 50.
Okay.
I want to thank you for coming back and sticking with this, and Matt talked about how long ago it was when you first came to town. You know, from my perspective, this is one of the really critical economic development projects that we've had since I've been on the council, to salvage a historic building and to make it something great for another generation. Your company's interested. I think the number is over $35 million in investment into $36 million into this. It rivals some of the new construction we have. The media and the headlines usually gets you know, directed to those new construction projects, but you know, I challenge anybody to watch a project unfold that can be as significant as this can be. Not only is it along Walnut, where we have made significant changes in the last 10 days, in fact, but it's an area in the skywalks that has 5 different skywalks connecting to it. No other building in downtown serves as that kind of integration of the rest of downtown. So it is a critical location. It's a beautiful building. Some of my favorite memories are in the tea room, and I think all of Des Moines should be really proud that we've not given in to any second-rate project, because we knew that a first-rate project would come along. I want to congratulate and thank you, and thank the city manager, Matt Anderson, and everybody in economic development that stayed on this, because it's really important that we keep what we have, those historic things, and invest in them. This can be really, really special. It's part of that vibe that we want downtown. Plus, it's really good economics for us. There's a real payoff for the taxpayers over time, and generations from now, they'll be glad from a financial end that we saved this building.
Good point.
Thanks, David.
I'll go ahead and...
Would anybody else like to speak on this subject? Okay, we'll close. Okay, Frank, go ahead.
Skip, I'd like to just say one thing. I certainly commend the Alexander Group for staying involved in this thing and working to bring it to some level of occupancy and fruition. However, you know, one of the things that is caused me a little pause is the all-affordable housing units. It would be nice if we had a mix, especially given all the work that we're doing at the moment to bring back, you know, some pretty high-end retail into the core of downtown Des Moines, and certainly, you know, a good mix of housing, including affordable units and market rate. This seems to make sense, and I'm sorry to hear that that kind of a deal is tough to, sounds like maybe finance or something at this point in time, but it seems like it works against our goal of having that mixed housing assortment in downtown and all kinds of folks living together down here.
Thank you, Frank.
I'm going to move item 46A, B, and C, and wish you luck, and keep us posted if there are opportunities for us to be of assistance to you as you deal with some of the issues you still have.
Okay, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Did you vote yes, Frank?
Yeah.
May have been better if you could push the button.
Motion carried.
7 yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe that we now go back to ordinances. Final consideration, number 36, is that correct? I have to read all this, don't I? Okay. On rezoning of 4312, 4282, 4250, and 4216 East 50th Street from limited M1 light industrial to R3 multiple family residential to allow development of up to 200 residential apartments. Requires 6 votes for approval. Council Communication Number 12-606. A, authorizing city manager to sign Iowa Finance Authority Form 5S Local Contributing Effort for a low-income housing tax credit project application for Broadway Heights, 4282 East 50th Street, to be submitted for funding in the 2013 round. B, approving enterprise zone benefits application to be referred to the Des Moines Enterprise Zone Commission and the Iowa Economic Development Authority for Broadway Heights LLC, Phase 1, Dan Cornelison, General Counsel and Managing Member, Hubble Realty Company, $6.5 million project constructing 65 housing units at 4282 East 50th Street in the Northeast Hubble Broadway Enterprise Zone. And C, approving enterprise zone benefits application to be referred to the Des Moines Enterprise Zone Commission and the Iowa Economic Development Authority for Broadway Heights LLC, Phase 2, Dan Cornelison, General Counsel and Managing Member, Hubble Realty Company, $8.3 million project constructing 90 housing units at 4216 East 50th Street in the Northeast Hubble Broadway Enterprise Zone. Michael.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council, Michael Ludwig, Planning Administrator. This is the third reading of this item that's been in front of you. And just this aerial photo, very quickly. The core issue of this has been whether or not Aurora Avenue should be extended from Northeast 46th Street heading east to serve approximately 270 acres of ground, help serve 270 acres of ground in future development in Des Moines. We estimate that this 2,600-foot section of roadway has a cost of approximately $2 to $3 million. At this point, the city has very limited ability to assess any property for the first 1,300 feet of that roadway. The subject property has about 600 feet of frontage along what would be the extension of Aurora Avenue. And we've estimated just that 600-foot section of roadway to be about $480,000. The last council meeting, the council had asked for staff to work with Hubble Development to see if there could be a cost share agreement reached. Hubble did submit a proposal for city consideration. The proposal from Hubble was for a $16,000 contribution for that 600-foot portion of roadway. Staff believes that that offer should not be accepted, and in the absence of any other agreement, we believe that the rezoning should be denied at this time. That recommendation did not come lightly. We have looked at that very, very carefully, but I think overall the concern is the $2 to $3 million price tag for this roadway and very limited ability to obtain cost shares for that roadway. So with that, I am available if you have questions. Actually the zoning item is the first on the agenda. If the zoning is denied, we believe that items A, B, and C become basically moot and would also not go forward. So I'm available if you have questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Mike? Steve, would you like to say anything?
I guess I do have one question for Mike. Mike, this Reuter property that's kind of isolated in there, they really don't have any access to that, do they, without having an agreement with Hubble? Or without us addressing the Aurora situation?
Yeah, the Reuter property is this kind of triangular shaped parcel up in the corner. You are correct. It was a remnant parcel from the Highway 65 construction, and they bought that. They do not have, currently they do not have any access out to Broadway from their property. In the past, they had, I believe, discussed opportunity to access across an intervening parcel through the Hubble Broadway Business Park over to Northeast 50th Street. But they've not been successful in obtaining that access, so they currently are landlocked. There's an intervening property owner right here. Last name is Porter in this area. that would be an intervening parcel between the Reuter parcel and an extension of Aurora Avenue in the future. So without an access somehow to the north or prior to Aurora Avenue, the Reuter property then would likely have to access down through Porter property to extension of the road.
Thank you.
Mike, what if Porter said no?
Which they would have the right to do.
Yeah, the situation really is no different than exists today. The property is a landlocked parcel that they acquired without any access rights, so they're attempting to try and resolve those issues.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Steve?
Mayor Horkham, Councilman Steve Niebuhr with Hubble Realty Company, 6900 Westtown Parkway, West Des Moines. I won't belabor a lot of points. I know we've talked about this project quite a bit. One thing I would like to make it clear is we are offering to bring 90 units of market rate apartments to the city of Des Moines in light of the last discussion. This would be a new development of market rate apartments on the east side, which I don't believe there's been significant new construction of market rate apartments on the east side for quite some time. The other half of the project will be tax credit. We're not asking for any subsidy. We're just asking that we're not penalized in making the project not feasible by putting in the extension of Aurora. Just want to make that clear. We have talked about several different ways to try and solve this. The last idea that came up was a cost share on a per acre basis, which I believe actually some of the council members came up with. That was what we offered and used the formula that was suggested. Even if you use the city's estimate versus our engineer's estimate in the same formula, our contribution would go from $16,000 to about $21,000, which is something based on a per acre basis we could work with. Also mentioned was a petition and waiver concept. That doesn't come up. Really, it just comes down to this project can't afford to front the cost of the extension of Aurora. If it is placed on the project, it will kill the project financially. We're trying to do market rate apartments without any form of subsidy. If you want it, here's the opportunity. The other thing, I will address the comments about the Reuter access since it has come up briefly. About a little over 10 years ago, in the year 2000, when Reuter purchased this piece right here that was landlocked, they requested access across the front of our parcel for Murphy Tractor. Murphy is a tenant of ours. They objected. They did not want the traffic flow in front of their building to access to the Reuter piece, so we objected. We did offer Reuter at the time the opportunity to buy this lot right here, which would provide access and access to utilities across the back of the lot. He found that as not acceptable. We gave him an option. He chose not to pursue it, just to be clear.
Okay, thank you.
Here to answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions of Steve? Anybody else in the audience that'd like to speak on this? If there's anybody else, please line up along that wall.
My name is James Heiliger, address 245 Southeast Booth, Waukee. I'm an attorney for Reader Corp. I just wanted to address this comment about the offer Hubble made. There was an offer, and Todd Reader was willing to purchase that property, and Hubble backed out of the deal and instead offered it to Schwann's, which they ultimately ended up selling it to. We believe this was done as an attempt to keep readers from being able to access the property at that time. So that's the only comment I have. Also, I think you have a letter that shows our objection to the rezoning of the property.
Any questions for James? Thank you. Anybody else to speak on this issue? We'll close the public hearing. Bob?
Well, I've talked to Steve numerous times, and we've discussed this issue. And on the first two readings, I voted to approve it with the idea that if we couldn't resolve this Aurora situation that I wouldn't guarantee approval on the third reading. I've talked with some of the other council people, and they kind of understand the situation also. But I just think that Aurora is very necessary if we're going to be able to develop that other land up there to the east. I think that Steve has worked with the staff some, but the dollar amount is way under from what I understand we would need to address that. And then also that we would have to go add that to our CAP in the future. And I think, if I'm right, Rick, I said it'd be about $1 million that the city would have to come up with.
It'd be over $1 million.
Over $1 million. So that's a very large amount, and I just think that there's something else that could be worked out, I think, with the Hubble Realty. Hubble's been, has done some great projects, and I think the project's great. I just have a problem with how we're going to be able to, as a city, to address this other land that's up to the east there.
It's my understanding, again, is that everything that's being discussed here tonight is market rate. So we are not up against a deadline because...
1/2 is market rate, 1/2 is tax rate.
Okay, so we are against a deadline.
Okay.
And the petition of waiver that we talked about, there's not a willingness on the part of Hubble to agree to a dollar amount or to a clause?
I think that's something we could consider. I would ask that we put a time frame on that. It does make it difficult to place permanent financing with that hanging out there. But, you know, if we could look at a 5 to 7 year horizon on that, if the city brought a project forward, that we would sign a petition, well, we'd sign a petition waiver regarding a project within a 5 to 7 year time frame, which basically, I think, yields our rights to object or argue about the price. One thing, you're saying in the $1 million, there's also another 270 acres that can participate in the cost of that road. Why does that all have to be put between Hubble and the city? There's other areas to be developed that can share in the cost of that. And there's been master plans submitted for over, I think, 180 single-family lots on that 270 acres. So it's not that there aren't other participants potentially available to help take care of that $1 million that you're referring to.
Is there...
I think the manager would like to address that.
I would like to address the comment that was just made there. There is about 270 acres, as has been pointed out, that's vacant. And remember, this is land that was annexed in the city to allow us to develop the property. So the city has a vested interest in making sure that property can be developed. The total cost of the street paving for Aurora is upwards of $3 million, range of 2.1 to 3.2 million. And I would agree, there's no way that entire cost should be borne by Hubble. What should be borne by Hubble would be a fair share of that. And perhaps if there's time to work with all of those owners and look at a plan as to how you can access that area, and look at a way to apportion that cost fairly among those vacant landowners, something could be worked out. I'm not sure we can do it tonight in the short time we have, but given some time and the ability to work with those other owners, perhaps there is a way to fairly spread those costs among all the benefited parties.
Well, it sounds like there's some time restrictions to be able to comply with this. Is this something that we could discuss further and maybe have a special meeting on it by, say, Friday or something, so they could still meet their timelines? Yep.
The tax credit portion of the applications are due the 10th of December.
Okay.
The enterprise zone meeting that we would go to is tomorrow night. So
You've got to have the zoning in hand.
yeah, I mean we're right up 24 hours within the time frames.
Okay. Well, that wouldn't work then. Yeah.
The enterprise zone is also, zoning is predicated on that?
I'll actually defer to city manager. Do you know if we have to have zoning in place before we go to enterprise zone?
I'm not sure. I'll look back at the staff here. I'm sure they have the answer.
I believe that the 5S form, which is, I think, item A under this, is basically certifying they have the zoning for the tax credit application. So they would not have the zoning at this point to sign that form. As far as the enterprise zone credits, it's already in an enterprise zone. So ultimately, those, I know they're scheduled for tomorrow night, but an industrial development would be eligible for enterprise zone improvements. So I'm not certain that the zoning is necessarily tied, other than it's a combined application that's being submitted to IFA, and so they would be asking that all those things be in
But the
place.
form doesn't have to be submitted until they submit it on the deadline on the 10th.
Correct.
Correct.
So if I understand that correctly, if I may, Mr. Mayor, the council could wait until, say, Friday or so to take final action on this item and not jeopardize the enterprise zone action?
I believe so. The 10th would be the application.
We're in the zone, it's just a matter.
Yeah.
Would the enterprise zone approve it without having the exact zoning?
Bob, I was just trying to test your idea about working through some of these. I'll tell you where I'm at. I want the market rate apartments out there. I think it's a great sign for the east side, and I think the overall project can be good. Quite frankly, I just can't find myself supporting it until we have the access issue worked out to the satisfaction of the city on the other parcel. We've annexed a bunch of area out there. We have applications into STP for road improvements and up and down Douglas and in that area. It just doesn't make sense to me that we would wall off a parcel that. Now, if we can solve that between now and Friday and come back together, I'm fine with that. But it's a really good project and it ought to have our support. I just think this alone and cutting us off on the other parcel makes it really difficult.
Well, and I think there will be some heavy lifting there, but again, the merits of the project warrant that. And there's going to need to be, and I'm looking at you, because you're the attorney for the other gentleman that's out there, you guys are going to have to work together and figure out how to get this done.
Well, if I could make a comment. First, the land use policy for that area, including the subject parcels, is commercial currently. We have met with staff on several occasions. We have interest in commercial development on that parcel. We have potential tenants if we put up a spec building. We don't have access. That's the issue right now.
Well, but that was your issue when you purchased the land, and I mean, to me, that was an error.
Yeah.
Well, we can get access condemnation if we have to. We're asking the city to work with us. We tried to work with Hubble. It didn't work.
You're asking the city to work, we're asking you to work with us.
Thank you, Bob.
We've met with the city. We've met with Rita Connor on several occasions, and then we met with Mike too this week to discuss the access issue.
So is this something, if we had to, if Steve his company would agree to work on this and to come back, and we could come back on Friday for a special meeting, see if we could address the overall need for that area, would you be willing to work with that?
We're willing to work with the city. We want to work with the city. The issue that was brought to our attention by staff is that if this project goes forward, then the chances are that the land use policy is going to be amended to change this to residential, the whole area, the whole 270 acres, which would mean that this is no longer going to be commercially developed, which is something we're not interested in.
That's why I would suggest you stay involved in it, see that that doesn't occur.
And we have been involved. For almost a year and a half, we've been working with Rita Connor on this.
However, your letter of objection we just have received, we didn't know you existed.
Yeah, we didn't know this existed either until this week when we met with Rita. Nobody had brought it to our attention.
Brian, you have a comment?
And I'll maybe direct this to everybody involved. I mean, is this a situation, it seems like we the last time this was before us, we had the same conversation. Can we all, 3 entities now, get together and try and figure this thing out so we can work together to get it done? Or are we just, I mean, is this going to come back with nothing further done on it? Because it seems like the last time we were here, nothing's been done on it, and we're just revisiting the same thing over and over again. Can we somehow, all 3 of you, work together to figure out a way to get this done? That's the question.
Absolutely. We would have liked to have done that 4 years ago.
I'm not trying to, I mean, I think there's
No, I think you're right.
opportunities here that we've
If there's a will,
maybe
there's a
missed.
way.
Yeah.
But my point about access, I become a little less sympathetic, quite honestly, if we don't see some movement in trying to get this resolved,
Right.
with all parties participating.
I don't think we've ever voiced opposition to participating in access. Our opposition stems from the potential impact of the project would have on the future land use of our parcel.
What I'm saying is, if you're looking at developing the parcel as commercial and they're looking at the adjoining property, they're looking to do their project, we have a vested interest, we can all get together and figure out a way to get access in there.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're.
And by figuring out a way to get access, I'm talking about money for the access.
Yeah.
Mr. Manager?
Well, yeah, just to be clear, the staff is willing to continue working on this and to try to find a solution. Steve Niebuhr from Hubble, your statement that you'd be willing to consider up to $200,000, I don't want to misquote what you said, that's very meaningful. That's different information than we had up until earlier today. So if that commitment is there, we're certainly willing, if council wants us to continue to work on it. But keep this in mind. There's 270 acres. You represent 40 acres?
20.
20 acres. Okay, so there's a lot of other landowners out there that really ultimately are going to be involved in the decision making. I want to be realistic about trying to get all of those parties together between now and Friday and getting something worked out. Can we continue to work on it? Absolutely, we can. And we'll try to find some way to think about it that has all the parties addressed as much as we can. But this is you're talking about a major undertaking that's going to take a lot of work with a lot of different owners.
From our perspective, if we don't monitor the city council agenda every week because we have properties all over, and this isn't one that is actively, been involved. If this would have been brought to our attention earlier by Hubble, or somebody would have come to us and said, hey, we're trying to get this project put together, we're going to need your help. Absolutely, we would have had those conversations. We have not heard anything from anybody other than the planning department of the city, who has been willing to work with us and has been, what I would consider a proponent of ours and what we want to do.
So we can keep the ball moving forward. I'm very supportive if it takes another 4 or 5 days to figure out how to make this work. It's a critical project for the east side, the market rate units, and I agree with all the comments that have been made about that. I'm also sensitive to the Aurora piece. I cannot believe that we cannot figure out how to make this work. I mean, I understand that the hearing is closed. I understand all those legal issues. Don't necessarily agree with them when I think we're still having part of the hearing now. It's a third reading, that we can't figure out a way to get everybody that's property owner to say, we're gonna share in the cost of this. So let's figure out how to get it done. I mean, it's the right thing for the city.
Yeah.
Let's figure out how to get it done. And I mean, all those property owners need to come in, sit down, roll up their shirt sleeves and say, we're going to get this done. Not how can we stop the project, but let's get it done.
Again, the problem is...
I understand. I'm going to...
Frank, do you have a comment before I turn it back to Bob?
Jeez.
Really not. I think everybody covered everything, and it sounds like if Hubble and the rest of us are willing to do it, I'll do whatever I can do between now and Friday, and let's see if we can make it happen. I think that the information I've heard this evening is different than what I've heard in terms of, flexibility, in terms of trying to find ways to work it out. And I think maybe we're getting close to something that maybe we can live with.
Thanks, Frank.
Yep.
Bob?
So I just would like Steve, if he would be willing to work on this, and we take a special meeting on Friday and
work with staff on that, if that would work, if we would, what would we do? Continue it?
Sure.
We could continue to a special meeting on Friday would be my motion, and hopefully.
Okay, here's an American Bistro joint.
What was that, Frank?
Sorry.
He's ordering.
He was ordering pizza.
You gonna order for us?
So that would be my motion, and glad that Steve is still willing to work on the project.
Thank you. Where's he at?
Mr. Coleman? Mr. County?
All right, so the motion was to continue, right?
Continue to Friday.
Okay, good. Yeah, aye.
Motion carries.
7 yes.
Thank you, Steve, and everybody else.
Thanks, Steve.
We'll move on now to 37. On rezoning of 3201, 3211, 3221 Forest Avenue, and 1414 32nd Street from C1 Neighborhood Retail Commercial, R161 Family Low Density Residential, and R3 Multiple Family Residential to limited NPC Neighborhood Pedestrian Commercial to allow redevelopment of the property for pedestrian-oriented multiple family residential apartments subject to conditions. A, authorizing city manager to sign Iowa Finance Authority Form 5S local contributing effort for a low-income housing tax credit project application for 3201 Forest Avenue to be submitted for funding in the 2013 round. B, approving enterprise zone benefits application to be referred to the Des Moines Enterprise Zone Commission and the Iowa Economic Development Authority for Forest Housing 1 LP Mike Nelson, Nelson Development, $7 million project constructing up to 48 housing units at 3201 Forest Avenue in the proposed Forest Avenue Corridor 2 Enterprise Zone. And C, approving application of the Iowa Economic Development Authority to certify proposed enterprise zone of Forest Avenue Corridor 2, 3201 Forest Avenue, 0.109 acres, proposed construction of up to 48 affordable and market rate housing units by Nelson Development. Is there anybody from staff that would like to speak to this first?
Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, Michael Ludwig, Planning Administrator. This is the third reading of the rezoning on this property. The additional items were placed on here. They are intending to apply once again for tax credit application to the state, which is due next week. Each of these items reference that it's an up to 48 units. As you'll recall, the first and second readings, the zoning, there was discussion about how many units should be built on the property. And under this proposed NPC zoning, they are subject to a site plan review by the Plan and Zoning Commission prior to any approval for development. There is no guarantee of the total number of units. The applicant has stated to the Planning Commission their desire is 48 units, but that has not been approved to this point. They still go through that site planning process. So the zoning, there's been no change between second and third readings on the zoning proposal, and each of the additional items are referencing an up to 48 unit count, which will be determined at a later date by site plan review.
Mike, so A, B, and C really aren't an endorsement from the city or otherwise. It's just a kind of matter of right that they have.
The item A is just signing a form for the state that says that basically they're applying. We're just certifying what the zoning of the property is. It's after the zoning, so if there's a final decision on the zoning tonight, we can put that information on the form and sign it and submit it to the state. There's no request for approval of that. The enterprise zone application is whether or not ultimately to establish a new enterprise zone and then make them eligible for improvements. But
so no change in the plan?
No, it does not give any approval for 48 units specifically. That is still subject to site plan review.
Any other questions of Mike? Thank you.
Thank you.
Larry, would you like to speak for the applicant?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, excuse me, Larry James Jr., 3101 Ingersoll Avenue, Des Moines. Here on behalf of the applicant. And I've spoken twice to council already regarding this matter. I will just say a couple things. Mr. Ludwig stated the issue correctly. We are only seeking rezoning to neighborhood pedestrian commercial at this point. The site is currently zoned commercial C1. It's portion of the site. Portion of the site is zoned R3 multifamily at the corner of 33rd and Forest. And then one lot is zoned R160 single family. The neighborhood pedestrian commercial requires site plan review. And if this rezoning is granted tonight by council, the developer has committed and is again committing to meet with the surrounding neighbors, which many are here tonight, meet with the Drake Neighborhood Association, meet with Drake University, and meet with city staff to gain input and hopefully come to some sort of site plan approval. Again, that is subject to Plan and Zoning Commission approval. Nothing can happen on the site until that happens. So there's several additional hurdles that the applicant has to undertake before this goes forward. But again, we are at this point seeking only rezoning. And for the record, one more time, the Drake Neighborhood Association, I'll let the president speak for himself tonight. They approved have approved or support the rezoning. They have not seen the final site plan, so they have no comment whether support or approval of the site plan. We obviously will go back to the neighbors and the neighborhood association and seek their support. That remains to be seen. With that, I'll open up for questions.
Any questions? Larry, I do have one. You indicated that if it's passed, that you're willing to meet with the neighborhood organization on a periodic basis. My understanding is there's another group being formed, the Forest Avenue Corridor Group. If they do get formed, would you have a problem meeting with them also?
I would not have a problem. My only concern is I would want to make sure that I'm speaking with an organization that's recognized by the city of Des Moines. The Drake Neighborhood Association represents this area. Obviously, and again, what the developer has committed to doing, in addition to that meeting with the Drake Neighborhood Association, the developer is seeking to gain the support of surrounding neighbors. If that group were to be involved in that meeting, there's obviously no issue. It'd be a public meeting. Those folks definitely could attend and seek to provide their input.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak for or against this? And before this gentleman speaks, anybody who wants to speak, I'm going to ask you to stand up along the south wall now so we have an idea how many people there will be. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, my name is Bruce Wilson. I own and live at the property at 1540 32nd Street. But my connection with this area goes back 4 generations. The property in question is part of an area which, if you look at the plat maps, is the Rutledge Place addition. W.A. Rutledge was my great-grandfather. I'm actually living 3 blocks from where I began life. My mother and father and grandmother were living at 34th and Clark. I am opposed to this change because I believe it is totally not in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. And it is not the highest and best use of the property. The highest and best use is kind of a subjective thing. If you want to make money on something, then highest and best use is going to be what produces the most money. In my opinion, highest and best use is that which fits best within the community as it exists and enhances the whole area for everyone. I know we've got a building there that's been sitting vacant for quite a while. I remember it when it was Schrader Hardware Store on the corner. We had a store in the middle of the block called Comer's. I wound up there one day when I was about 3 years old, and a neighbor and I went on a little walk that our parents didn't know anything about. It was a neighborhood then. Mr. Comer knew who we were. called our parents and said, you know where they are. He had no problem keeping us. We were perusing a stack of little golden books. Several things interesting have come up this evening, and one has been notice. Now, like the gentleman who spoke previously, basically, this morning's newspaper article was the first I knew about. I think the city has got a really big problem when it comes to changes like this in terms of being sure that affected property owners and residents know what's going on. You know, we shouldn't, you know, this is kind of sounds like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy sometimes in terms of where, when, and how you're going to find a public notice. You know, I think we need to have some way that there is direct, actual notice given to people in the surrounding area who are going to be affected by these changes. I also, with all due respect to Drake Neighborhood Association Board, that board has had a problem for quite some time with representation of the area roughly north of Forest Avenue. And I was on that board for a number of years, and it was a result of my opposition to when Drake wanted to close Clark Street. I mean, and like I say, these are good people, but that board basically covers University South and does not represent the interests of the area north of Forest Avenue. And this is unfortunate, because the only way you know what's going on is if you can be at their board meetings, and then you might get a clue as to what's happening. But I'm sorry, you know, when they go in favor of something that's happening north of Forest, they are not interested parties. They don't know what's going on. They are not in a position to hear what the people up there are saying, and that is why there have been other, maybe or maybe not recognized, neighborhood associations develop. I believe there was a North Drake Neighbors, Kirkwood Glen, things like that, to try, because the Drake Neighborhood Association area is huge. I mean, it covers from MLK clear out to 41st Street, from clear up on Hickman, you know, down to the freeway. You know, and again, we've got a problem as far as representation in the area that's being affected by this change. Now, as I said, I oppose this change now. I don't think that putting apartments in that area is appropriate to the character of the neighborhood. I mean, the fraternity and sorority houses at least are have residential buildings.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions?
I'm sorry.
You indicated you were a past member of the board for Drake Neighborhood.
Yes.
Did you happen to sit on the board when they put together the neighborhood plan?
That was kind of an evolving process. I think that was about the time that I decided that I had too many conflicts, so was having problems getting to the meetings, and chose not to continue on the board. It's pretty close to that. I wasn't involved in a lot of that stuff because I just had too much going on, and I realized I couldn't do the job right.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Council. Derek Gord, 2422 Drake Park. I am president of the Drake Neighborhood Association. I'm not going to get into anything about the makeup of our board. It is true, we are a large neighborhood. I think Kathy Calhoun was noted for saying that it's the population of the Drake neighborhood is larger than 22 of Iowa's counties. It is a large neighborhood. We accept that. We believe that our numbers are our strength. That's why we have vigorously defended the borders of MLK to Franklin to 42nd Street to I-235. That's been our borders. We do reach out regularly to neighbors and residents. We have not had extensive communication on this because, as everybody has noted, we are not actually in a site review process right now. We're actually moving towards a zoning change to enable a site review process. Our plans right now would be after the first of the year to start getting education from such groups as Traffic and Transportation about traffic issues, groups like Iowa Finance Authority about some of the income grants that are being used to fund this project and other projects in our neighborhood. So we are looking at starting some of that, but we haven't gotten to that point of communicating that yet, which is why I think there are some people that haven't heard about this. I think one thing that we often do is ask that developers come to us at the early stages. And in this case, it was such an early stage when we heard it. I think there's a suspicion that the development is much further along, as if the city has accepted a plan, as if the neighborhood has agreed on a plan. We've seen nothing. We're prepared to have all of these discussions. I think when we have worked on an MPC zoned site plan, it's been a success. I remember, not to single them out because I know Russ is here, the Anwin project that we had on Forest on the other side of the neighborhood, an MPC zone project. The development there was very raucous the first meeting. We worked through our issues in that meeting, came back, and everybody in the second meeting, same people, very happy with the final product. So we are willing to work with everybody. We're willing to have anybody join our committees, our subcommittees. As to Mayor Pro Tem, your discussion about a Forest Avenue corridor, we encourage subgroups and subcommittees. Again, we are a large neighborhood. We can't do it all on our own, just as you can't run the entire city as only the council. You have a staff underneath you. You have subcommittees and boards that assist you. We encourage the same sort of thing. However, we do defend that we are the neighborhood association for the borders of I-235 to MLK to Franklin to 42nd Street. Any questions?
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you, Derek.
I'll be brief. My name's Mark Snyder. I own the property at 3121 Forest, which will be right next to this project. I realize right now it's just the zoning, but I'm here more tonight to talk about the Drake Neighborhood Association. If you're giving any weight at all to the Drake Neighborhood Association is for this, I ask you not to, because they're not representing our neighborhood. Nobody in that neighborhood was notified by the Drake Neighborhood Association. Nobody came to us. There's supposed flyers. Nobody can produce the flyers that supposedly were put on houses in the neighborhood. I just feel very strongly that Drake's coming in here and saying, I'm with the Drake Neighborhood Association, and the Drake neighborhood is for this. The board, Drake Neighborhood Board, is for it, not the Drake neighborhood in that area. I don't get any questions, but we were not notified. I don't know how he can represent us when we was never asked for any input or anything.
Any questions? Mark, have you ever attended a neighborhood meeting?
I did, and I'm going to start attending them.
Okay.
I attended their last board meeting. Unfortunately, they're a very disorganized company or committee right now. We've asked for some things that they just can't quite seem to produce and so forth. But, and well, as a matter of fact, which I need to find out, the next night, or I was given that night an application, I filled it out, I've sent the money. I haven't been notified, the check hasn't been cashed yet. So I'm a little in the air as to what's going on with that. I need to pursue that. But that very next night, or that night, she gave me a thing, sign up, give us your $30. I still have my $30 in my checking account. And no notification from them at all.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Mark,
question?
I guess I do have one question.
Sure.
Now that you've kind of followed the process and now that you're aware of kind of what's happening, do you have a thought on the rezoning tonight? Or did you come mostly to speak about the Drake neighborhoods?
Well, I came to speak about the weight that I feel that the council is using that for. I feel that like I said, I don't know how the whole process works, but I just feel that it should be a package deal. Somebody should come in and say, we want to rechange the zoning. This is what we want to do. We look at it as a neighborhood and say, yeah, we love it. Let's get the zoning changed and let's break the ground.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Council, my name's Ken Whitehead. I live at 1427 32nd Street, which is approximately 100 feet from where this building will stand. It is hard for me to imagine that you're going to drop as many as 48 units in there. If you can imagine in your own neighborhood what would happen if suddenly you put 48 new families in that same area, what it would do to traffic. One of the things that comes to my mind is that this is going to be low housing, which in the first information meeting I was at, it was indicated that it was absolutely not going to be low-income housing. Where are all these people's kids going to play? This is Forest Avenue. There are a lot of businesses in this area. There is a lot of traffic in this area. I want to know where these kids are going to play. There's going to be a building and a parking lot and a very, very small area of grass, and I don't believe that you can put 48 families in that area with kids potentially and have them be safe to play. The other thing that concerns me is that I feel that this whole project is being ramrodded. Nobody seems to know for sure what the project is, but we want to rezone it. I'd like to see some concrete plans about what exactly the project is. I'd like to know how many units are going to be there. I'd like to see some other type of business tied to this project at the street level. Retail won't work. There's no place to park. It would have to be some type of offices. But I believe that if you tie residential to some type of office project in this area, it will give us some assurance that this isn't just going to turn into an apartment building with people coming and going all hours of the day and night and junk cars sitting around. And the parking on our streets is already an issue. If you put 48 units in there, it's not realistic to believe that they're only going to have one car. Some of them may only have one car, some of them may not have any, but I have a hard time believing that less than at least half of them are going to have 2 cars or less, which means there's not going to be adequate parking in their parking area for these units, and that doesn't even account for if they have company. So the other thing that I would like to say is that the Drake Neighborhood Association does not represent me. I have not yet one time received anything in the mail or at my door. If they can afford to pay somebody to walk the neighborhood and deliver these notices door to door, I think that they can afford the postage to put it in the mail to give us some assurance that we have the information about when the meetings are going to be held and what's going on. I wouldn't know about this tonight had it not been in the paper and had it not been for some of the other people who are able to be more active, let me know what was going on. So I appreciate you letting me speak.
Any questions for Kevin? Thank you.
My name is Jerry Schillinger. I live at 1429 32nd Street. I live just a little ways from there. And the parking is just humongous there. I mean, you go down there at night, you got Drake students, you got 6 or 7 people living in one house that park on that street. Jethro's, both sides of Forest Park. You try to pull out on that street, you almost get hit. You cannot see because of double parking. And my other thing is, where is the garbage trucks can be pulling in and out? They haven't really answered that question. I want them to pull in and go right straight out that building. Dude, we got little kids playing on that street. I don't want no vehicles backing out on that street. And there are 48 units. If people come to visit, where are they going to park? That's just way too big. 3-story, it's going to cut down my view going across over on Forest. It's just way too big. That's all I got to say.
Any questions for Jerry? Thanks, Jerry.
I'm Diane Greenwood. I live at 1440 32nd Street, and we're the first house past the 250-foot mark for the city's notification. So the only way I found out about it was from the neighbors that live down there. Now there's my house, our house, and another house before the block ends, and it seems like the area seems rather small for notifying people, because even though it's at the other end of the street, we're affected by what goes on down there. And I would also like to say that since the current owner has owned that property, he has let it run down. In the paper, they describe it as neglected. Well, he's the one that neglected it. We have had to call the city to get the weeds mowed, to get the sidewalks shoveled, to get the trash picked up. So, and the windows right now, if you drive along there on Forest, about half of them are boarded up. there's been one door that's had two parts of it have holes in it, and that's been there for 2 or 3 weeks. And we've talked to the lawyer, Mr. James, and expressed concerns about the way the property looks at the present time. And so it kind of makes us think, how will anything that gets built there be maintained? If what's there now, I understand the building's been sitting empty, and he has kept the graffiti painted over when that gets on, but as the building is falling apart, the grounds look terrible. I mean, it's really an eyesore, and it's only, when he bought the property, there were tenants in the buildings, and they've all left, and the building has just sat there empty. So I guess that's our concern. So, and I understand the zoning will probably pass, and if that protects our neighborhood, then I'm for the zoning change. And I am a member of the Drake Neighborhood Association, although I wasn't notified of any of the meetings. I plan to go to the meeting this next week and make sure that this comes up for discussion again. I guess we have concerns about the parking and the traffic, and if the traffic department is willing to work with us, I'm willing to work, to try to resolve a lot of those issues. We're also in the new snow route zone, where it's going to be odd and even, and so we don't even know how that's going to affect parking on our street. So I guess I just have concerns about the way the property looks now, and if it has to sit there another 6 months looking like it does, and it snows, who's going to shovel it? Because apparently nobody, when we call to complain, the county has to come out and mow. So I guess those are my concerns.
So it sounds like you'd like to get rid of that vacant building there then. It's an eyesore.
I would like something appropriate for the neighborhood to go in there, yes.
Any other questions for Diane? Thank you. Mary.
Mayor Pro Tem and members of the City Council, my name is Mary Brubaker. I live at 612 44th Street. Here we are for the last chance for you to make a huge difference for the neighbors you've heard tonight who are impacted by this zoning change. I'm here to ask you to do the right thing and to vote no. This neighborhood is still my neighborhood, in part and certainly in my heart. I grew up a half a block away on 33rd Street, 1422, and lived there through my Drake College days. My parents lived there until the late 80s. It was a middle-class neighborhood with lots of children and gardens and green, well-trimmed lawns, tall trees, and even a vacant lot where we played baseball and had snowball fights. Isn't there an old neighborhood in each of us? A place where we were formed and which we helped to form? Although I've lived in 4 since then, 3 in the Drake neighborhood, this is still my not-to-be-forgotten one. In his best-selling book, All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten, best-selling author Robert Fulghum wrote, "There are places we all come from, deep, rooty, common places that make us who we are, and we disdain them or treat them lightly at our peril. We turn our backs on them at the risk of self-contempt. There is a sense in which we need to go home again, to sanctify our memories. I have learned that the alleys, the yards, the trees of old neighborhoods are a part of my very being." A little history about the people of the neighborhood, and you've heard from some of them. The well-known educator and showman Ray Pugh lived around the corner from us on 32nd, right on the corner of Clark and 32nd, I believe. He enlivened the whole area with his larger-than-life personality and his backyard plays and his performances and his neighborliness. Businessman and Drake official Bobby Clark lived up the street near the minister. Next door lived a young woman who later became a feature writer for the Des Moines Register and Tribune, where I and my sisters also worked. Up the street lived a local woman who was a softball legend. Across the street lived the father of Julie McGuire, the creator of the popular Zanzibar's Coffee House. It was a wonderful place to grow up. Neighborhoods like ours are not buildings and parking lots, if we're lucky. They are endowed with the character of special people, an eclectic mix of middle America, and they are fragile, and they need our constant care and vigilance. I hope you won't vote to change that all-important fabric of what makes Des Moines an all-American city. This neighborhood, though it needs some help and some attention, has been and is a special emblem of what it is right with our residential landscapes. Think about your neighborhood and what it means to you, and that you protect and care about. Support these neighbors who do not want this one destroyed. Think about who you serve as you make these city council decisions. Should not the hardworking homeowners, taxpayers striving to make their neighborhood livable and pleasant, like the ones you've heard tonight, free of nightmare traffic and bad development, come first with you? They elected you to serve them.
Mary, how much more time do you need?
10 seconds.
Okay, that'll work.
They elect you, and I think you work for them, not for developers who don't and never will live there beside them. They deserve to hold on to their visions and versions of the American dream, a place to call home, a neighborhood to always be happy to remember.
Thank you. Any questions for Mary? Thank you, Mary.
At least I gave a different speech each night.
I will too. Nan Stillion, 1604 24th Place, which is north and east of the area, but I too grew up on 33rd. I'm throwing away what I prepared, but as usual, do I have a camera? Yeah. This is the imaginary projection of the developer's idea. But how many of you here know the name of the owner of the property?
Mike Nelson?
Mike Nelson.
No. Mike Nelson is the developer. The owner of the property lives in Des Moines, and nobody has seen him here. And the builder for the property lives somewhere in Nebraska and has never been mentioned. Now, why hasn't the owner of the property, who has deliberately deteriorated it, passed up chances to rent it before it was damaged by we wonder who? This has been sitting there for 6 years, and it has been deliberately deteriorated by somebody whose name you do not know. So I urge you, and I realize this is the beginning of a long matter, because I don't expect anyone who is into doing this kind of thing is interested in anything we've said here. There are 2 or 3 things you must know in addition to this. The Des Moines, the Drake Neighborhood Association has a great mailing list, and they leave it open so you can look through it and see who's on the newsletter. But the Drake Neighborhood Association, I think 2 or 3 of us here who have asked for the list of members, paid members, and I'm a paid member. I was a paid member in 2010 and went to one meeting and then went to the hospital, and I'm a paid member again as a result of a month or so ago. But the Drake Neighborhood Association does not work by Robert's rules for their meetings. And, well, rather than go into any details on that, it is a very small group. I have seen any number of high school groups that run better meetings. And so the idea, when we were told and you all believed that Drake, and Dr. Maxwell knew all about this, and the Drake Neighborhood Association approved it, you didn't know what you thought, and no one sought to inform you. Now, Derek Gord is one of the most charming individuals I've met in a long time. He is really charming. But he doesn't run a meeting. He can be the host, and I'll give him credit for almost anything. But he does not have a large group that is the Drake Neighborhood Association. One other thing, and I don't want to have to go on one of the city boards to have to make some things happen. But when you have a project that is going to change the whole neighborhood atmosphere, neighborhood character of this sort, owned by somebody you don't know, then you need some kind of a system that will link to people so you will get cards back. Now that Moines system the city is sending out, people do not even, it doesn't look like something official, it doesn't look like something that needs to be paid attention to. This has to change. And when it's a big group project, when it's a big money project, then it has to be a larger circle. And if you have to go to the state to get, it's a rural legislature. So if cities have to go to the state to get these
And we need to wrap this up.
Yeah, okay. You've got it. You know what I'm saying. And this needs to be tabled, and the Iowa Finance Authority should not hear anything about it. This one.
Hey, ma'am. I think, can you see that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the assessor site, the one I relied on, Mr. James. Is Mike Nelson and the company the owner of the property? Yes. All right. I think it's accurate here. And
It's on the assessor's page.
can you see that, ma'am?
I see that, yes.
Larry?
Mr. Mayor, Pro Tem, members of the council, just with a short rebuttal. Obviously, people in this neighborhood care a great deal about their neighborhood, and there's no question about that. The developer understands that. I certainly understand that. Again, the council is being asked tonight to rezone only to neighborhood pedestrian commercial, a zoning classification that was in the Drake Neighborhood Association plan the city adopted in 2011. The developer thought that it was doing the right thing to ask for this because that is specifically on that block with the neighborhood association, which was not just the board, but was a very inclusive two-year process, included city staff and the neighbors at large requested. Obviously, the developer can't reach out to every single individual. However, as I've stated already, we are committed, we being my client is committed to meet with the neighborhood association, Drake University, surrounding neighbors, whether or not they are Drake Neighborhood Association members on this process. It's always hard to follow Ms. Brubaker and Ms. Stillians. They're much more eloquent than I am, but I will say that I just will reiterate that council is being asked tonight to pass something that the developer relied on, which was the Drake Neighborhood Association's plan, sought this rezoning, which is a pedestrian-friendly zoning. It's been used on Ingersoll. It's being used in the Drake Dogtown area. It really creates a very walkable, pedestrian-friendly environment, which the city, the mayor, and council has really sought to create and recreate in our city. This project, if passed, again, we have a whole other series of meetings to go through prior to final approval, will create a project that, in my mind, I honestly can say this, that this is a very sustainable direction, because it will allow people to create housing that we can put on these corridors and get people out of these cut-up old houses in very dangerous conditions. So again, we're not talking about the plan tonight, but what I'm saying is that I have a very strong belief that if council allows this to go forward, my client is very committed to working with the neighbors and to create a project that the city and the neighborhood will be proud of. Any further questions?
Larry, I saw Dolph Poyam here earlier tonight,
Yes.
and he was here for what reason?
He was here for the
Holiday
baskets that the city holiday baskets that he's working on as a spokesman.
But we also had the letter signed by Dolph representing Drake.
Yes, Dolph Poyam represents Drake in a lot of the neighborhood matters as community outreach. Drake University is on record for supporting the rezoning. And again, the Drake University will be consulted as to the ultimate project, whatever project comes back to the neighbors before we go to P&Z and staff with anything.
Okay, thank you.
Not seeing anybody else lined up, I'm going to close the public hearing, and I will go to the council. Hallie.
I appreciate everyone coming to speak. I first want to just make the observation that I think the Drake neighborhood serves a function, and it's not to represent every single neighbor of a neighborhood. Obviously their goal is to do the best they can in representing that, as does every other neighborhood. Now, there's a number of reasons that that's not possible, whether it be lack of involvement, the ability to attend lots of meetings, including subcommittees and so forth. It's difficult for residents and businesses to be involved in every aspect of that. So I do recognize that there may be some issues there. And one of the speakers indicated that I hope you're not basing your decision solely on the Drake neighborhood. I don't think that's the case for any of us on any item before us. I do think the neighborhood has some value in that their purpose for the city and being recognized by the city is in some capacity to represent the residents. So I just wanted to make that clear. I don't think they're the final say by any means, but I do think they have a voice, and they do represent, if not a majority, a large portion of the neighborhood. Secondly, I wanted to make an observation on the notification process. Several people indicated that they weren't notified. The city understands that, and that's an issue that's come up in the past, recently over the last 6 months, I believe. The city manager is currently working on refining our notification process. I believe he's appointed a subcommittee of citizens and staff to review some of our processes and see what can be changed. State law was indicated in terms of zoning and rezoning and the notification process, but we're also working to see how neighbors in a greater neighborhood can be notified in issues such as this. In terms of the item before us, I'm going to move item 37, A, B, and C, but I also want to make clear that that's by no means an endorsement of any project moving forward, and I think that was indicated by Larry James as well as a couple other speakers. We don't have a project. We don't know what's going to be there, and I think we're putting the cart before the horse if we try and discuss issues like garbage and where entryways are going to be, because we haven't gotten to that point yet. With that being said, I do understand the concerns. I heard the concerns regarding the best use for the property, about the parking, about the traffic. I heard the concerns about having 48 units there, about the 3 stories, about how the garbage is going to be picked up and so forth. We hear those concerns, but we're not to that point yet. In terms of where we're at tonight, the zoning is actually more strict and allows more city oversight than is currently there. I think there's unanimity in agreeing that the current condition of the property is not what we would like it to be, for whatever reason that is. And the current zoning allows uses that we don't want to be there moving forward. So for those reasons, I'm going to move the rezoning along with items A, B, and C tonight. And I do assure you that we will have the discussion when Larry James and his client come back before us to have a thorough discussion on what is going to ultimately be there. And I'm glad to hear that they are willing to work with the neighborhood and the involved residents to be a part of that process as we move forward.
We've closed the public hearing, Nan. I'm sorry. Bob, you got any comments?
I really don't. You do have to be aware that any site plan has to come back to the city and P&Z, and I'm glad to hear Larry say that they'd be glad to work with the neighborhood and come up with some plan that would be acceptable to them. So I'm going to support it.
And I just would.
Okay, I was going to go with Brian next.
Sorry.
I think it's a much needed change, and I hope the upcoming proposals look something like what was presented to us. And I don't understand the opposition. I'd love to have something like this in my ward.
Christine?
I'm going to be supportive of this. This is the very beginning of the process, and I know going back to the first and second readings that we had, there were a number of people that actually admitted that they had received notice, but they had not submitted or returned the documents. So, you know, I'm having a hard time understanding why we've gotten to this point, because I believe that there has been discussion. But again, this is the beginning of the process, so I think there will be ample opportunity for those of you that have just come on board at the final hours of this debate right now. And I encourage you to make that the beginning of a lot of additional input.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I support Hallie's motion. I'm one that also thinks that long-term this can be very good for the neighborhood on the northwest side of Drake University and for the city overall, so I appreciate your motion. I would like to just use a minute of my time to just take a personal moment. I've always found it really difficult as we've sat here, and occasionally citizens use our microphone. We're very open with it. We let everybody talk to denigrate our staff, and very rarely do we have people talking negatively about other community volunteers. And I just have to say, I wish that we would not do that from here. One of the presidents, Derek, you're working hard, and I'm probably the #1 critic of neighborhoods not working hard to really represent the whole neighborhood. But in this case, I just hate to see our microphone used to make comments like that. I think it's not healthy for the city, and certainly everybody's entitled to their opinion. I wish we wouldn't use our public forum here to express personal opinions about other people.
Mayor County, you still with us?
Yes, sir, I am. And I'll just, rather than, I think this is the first step has been pointed out, and I'm going to support Halle's motion. So I vote aye.
Thank you. Before I wrap this up and we confirm the vote, I'd like Mr. Ludwig to come back up to the podium a second. We've heard statements here tonight about the neighborhood plan, and it was put together in approximately 2 years from 2009 to 2011. What part does the city take in when we're putting together these plans, especially when there's specific areas? As I'm reading this plan, it talks towards Forest Avenue, and it sounds like the NPC fits with that plan, and I just would like to know, do we see to it that all the people in that area are aware that this is happening, or?
Yeah, I can't speak specifically to the neighborhood planning process. Our neighborhood planning division works with the neighborhood associations on those process. We did have city staff that worked with the neighborhood association and holding numerous public meetings for the association to give input on that plan. One of the reasons why this zoning is before you tonight is when the plan was drafted, there was a conscious decision not to legislatively rezone the property to NPC at that time. The NPC zoning district allows a lot of commercial uses that are prohibited by the action that's in front of you tonight. And legislatively, we would not have been able to put conditional zoning on this property. So it was a conscious decision to leave the zoning of this property for a future date, which is tonight.
And the plans still go through the steps of the NRB, P&Z, City Council, and Polk County for approval?
Correct.
So all 4 entities have approved this?
Yes.
Thank you.
7 yes.
Motion passes.
What you have done is just approved. Okay.
I'm going to move on now to ordinance's first consideration, number 38. Amending Chapter 114 of the Municipal Code regarding traffic regulation changes as follows. Council Communication number 12-591. A, parking and restriction changes on Grand Avenue from Des Moines River Bridge to East 4th Street. And B, parking and loading zone changes on 5th Avenue between Locust and Walnut Streets. Thank you to Brian's and Christine's.
I'll move 38A and B, and also request, non-pre-published.
Frank, did you hear that?
Aye.
That is me.
I think Chris left, didn't he?
6 yes.
He's here.
7.
7 yes.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Okay, we're going on to communications number 39 from Jeffrey, I hope I'm right here, Weiss and Chet Gwynn to discuss a resolution that the mayor and council asked politicians in Washington, D.C. to fund our cities instead of the war in Afghanistan.
Thank you. My name is Jeffrey Weiss. I live 3118 Aurora Avenue. I work for Catholic Peace Ministry and also teach in the social sciences at Grandview and DMAC. And we are here to ask you if you will join the United States National Conference of Mayors, cities of Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, smaller cities like Amherst, Massachusetts, to send a message to the Republicans and Democrats in the United States Senate, House, and in the executive branch of the U.S. government that as they negotiate the future of the United States federal budget into the long term, which is what they're doing right now, that the U.S. Conference of Mayors and many cities are saying it's time to weigh in and tell our politicians in Washington that it's time to build the United States of America. It's time to fund the needs of the cities, the domestic priorities of the people of this country, rather than a war that has lasted longer than 2 world wars combined. This resolution we are bringing to you today is supported by the Right Reverend Ellen Scarf, the Episcopal Diocese of Iowa Bishop, Bishop Richard Pates, the Catholic Diocese Bishop, also the Iowa Annual Conference United Methodist Church Bishop, Julius Calvin Trimble, a number of faith organizations, some labor involvement, some civic organizations. And it is simply, we're not asking for your money or any more of your time, just that you send a symbolic message to Washington, D.C. that it is time to build and concentrate on the cities of Des Moines and the needs of the people of this country. I'll end by saying we were here right before 2003 and asking you to support a resolution saying not to invade Iraq. And I remember, I think it was Councilmember Vlasic who was asking where I came up with a $200 billion figure for what the war in Iraq might cost. I was off, $1.2 trillion, so 200 billion plus a trillion. I was $1 trillion off. I always remember that because I spent a lot of time working on that figure, and I was troubled by it. In fact, when Vlasic asked me, I was like, how do I fudge my answer? But anyhow, God bless in this holiday season, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And we have another speaker.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. I'm Carmen Lampe Zeitler. I live at 2815 Center Street. For the last 16 years, I've been the Executive Director of Children and Family Urban Ministries. CFUM, for short, because it's way too long to say every time, is located in the neighborhood northwest of Mercy Hospital, right across the street from Moulton Extended Learning Center. Councilman Grease, you were there a couple of years ago to help celebrate Lights On After School. The mission of CFUM is to create a community to support the potential of children, youth, and families through educational success, healthy living, and community engagement. To that end, we offer out-of-school programming for children from kindergarten through high school. We offer an evening meal, a community meal 6 nights a week that tonight served 141 guests that are there coming together to eat just simply because they need something to eat. I used to say, when I would talk about CFUM, that we were in the most richly diverse and economically disadvantaged neighborhood in Des Moines. But now I say that we serve a neighborhood that is among the richly diverse and economically disadvantaged. Because over these 16 years that I've been at CFUM, I have seen the human needs in Des Moines dramatically increase. And at the same time, resources available for the city to meet those needs dramatically decrease. Just in the neighborhood around CFUM, that need and decrease is very clear. Moulton no longer has a librarian that works full-time at the school. They have fewer aides that are available for teachers in classrooms. Students have fewer counselors that they can turn to in times of crisis or for chronic needs. The school has gone from being able to offer an outstanding out-of-school program to being able to offer none at all. The fine and resourceful Forest Avenue Library is open significantly fewer hours with significantly fewer staff. Access to good, affordable housing, which is something I think we've always struggled with, is even more in decline. Emergency services for families just can't keep up with the need. I think your drive to get food for families during the holidays is a good thing and a noble thing, but it's just a tiny piece of what is needed in the city. I could go on, but you know better than anyone, the most increasing needs in our community are human needs. I picked up the City of Des Moines performance report last week at the library when I was there, and I love this report. I've always liked to look at it because it really breaks things down well, and I really appreciate over the years the use of local artists to illustrate some of the great things that are going on in Des Moines. The report on the state of Des Moines that I am forever hoping to see shows the average hourly wage is a family-sustaining wage, that every child is on grade level in reading and math, that every young person graduates from high school, that every student has access to the arts in the public schools, that everyone has access to world-class health care, that every neighborhood is a good place to raise children. That is why I come tonight to urge you to, along with Jeffrey and all the aforementioned sponsoring people and organizations, to send a message to Washington that it is time to stop the destruction of our warring and begin the resurrection of our cities where our children live. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Carmen? Frank, I think I will. I know this is near and dear to your heart, so I'll turn it over to you first.
Hello?
Yes.
Well, being the mayor that actually brought this before the Conference of Mayors, I would certainly move it to our city council. I think I want to thank Jeffrey and Chet and everybody that's spoken about it, not only tonight, but for most of their lives. It's important that we think about the future of our country and all future generations, and I think as we roll away from a war economy and we think about what's needed on American soil, I think taking some of those dollars and putting them into not only debt reduction, but improving the quality of life for all Americans is important to all of us. So I move it.
Thank you, Frank. Hallie?
If that's the motion, I think I would be opposed to that motion. I appreciate the speakers coming, and I'm not necessarily opposed to anything they shared. But I don't think I'm in a position as an elected official at a city level to tell the federal government how is appropriate to spend war dollars. I'm not privy to significant information that they have. It's my understanding that we're already withdrawing from Afghanistan and moving out of there. So I just don't think as a city council it's appropriate for us to tell the federal government how to act on foreign policy. So I would vote no on that if that's the motion.
Thank you. Bob?
Well, I'm going to vote yes on this. I serve on a number of boards where the charities are having difficulty fulfilling the needs of the neighbors, especially on the Bidwell Riverside board where they have a clothing house and try to have food for those who are in need. And I think the dollars could be better spent, so I'm going to vote yes on it.
Brian?
I agree with Bob.
Christine?
I'm going to vote no on this resolution, and I just don't feel it's the role of the city council to be involved giving direction to the federal government. We're a public policy board that's really focused on the citizens of Des Moines. I don't disagree with the comments that are made. I'd like to see some changes, but again, I think echoing some of Hallie's comments that it's really beyond our purview as local elected officials, and the president already has a plan in place where he has a withdrawal plan for Afghanistan in the war, and that's moving forward. I mean, he was reelected, so I assume that that's moving forward. So I'm just not comfortable supporting this.
Chris?
I acknowledge that there's a plan to pull out of Afghanistan, and I for one think that's a good thing. If I had to say one thing that was weak about this is I wish we were pulling out of Afghanistan for reasons far beyond just money. But there's probably a point in time over the last 10 years I wouldn't have supported a resolution like this because it would have been seen as very, political and partisan. But at this time, I think with a plan there, we're endorsing that plan. I think it says the resolution is, we formally support federal legislative action that would fund the safe and orderly withdrawal of U.S. soldiers from Afghanistan, cut non-essential Pentagon budget appropriations, and redirect the savings toward domestic priorities. And that's a statement that I support.
Thank you. Before we go to a vote, I had real qualms about this one, and Chet, you and I spoke yesterday. As promised, I came back and read through it several times very slowly, and I did have the opportunity to speak with the mayor by phone about it. And you know the reasons why I've got qualms. I don't want to speak about it publicly, but I'm going to go ahead and support this, so we'd have a vote at this time.
I guess 2 no.
Motion carried. I believe that's the end of our meeting.
Extra one.
Oh,
Extra
extra item. And I did.
If we knew you were going to clap, we would have done it earlier in the meeting.
Okay.
Is that, oh.
Might leave it up to Coleman.
I'll move a recommendation of Dory Briles and Greg Wattier. It makes an opening on the Urban Design Renewal Board. I think as others know, I tried to appoint Greg earlier, but there was a gender balance issue, and I had this request out to Dory for some time and was able to close the deal. Just FYI, I consulted with Jeff as well. Some people might know that Dory's role now is with the Library Foundation.
You're moving extra item 1A and B, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Mahaffey and Mr. Grease. Frank?
Aye.
He votes yes. Motion
yes.
carried. With that, I'm going to say goodnight, Galen, and a motion to adjourn would be in order. It's been moved. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned.
Aye.
Thank you, Frank. I hope the pizza's good there.